So the UK government has just dropped its 2025 autumn budget. And as always, there are some pretty big changes inside. Now, if you're an expat, a foreign national, or really anyone with financial ties back in the UK, you're probably asking yourself, what on earth does this mean for my money? Well, let's get into it and find out. So let's just cut straight to the chase. Do you own a property back in the UK? Maybe you have a pension from your time working there, or you're holding on to some UK-based investments? If you're nodding your head to any of those, then you need to listen up, because this budget has some crucial updates that are going to directly affect your wealth. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down for you. First, we'll look at the big picture. Then, we're going to dive deep into the key tax changes you need to know about. We'll cover pensions and inheritance, and then we'll run through some real-world scenarios so you can see how this might affect you. And we'll finish up with a 30-day action plan you can literally start using today. Okay, let's get started. Section 1. The big picture. Now, the government's official line is all about fairness and stability. But let's be honest, for those of us with financial interests spread across borders, it usually means one thing. The rules are getting tighter, and you really need to be paying attention. So here's the first major headline you need to grasp. Key tax thresholds, things like your personal income tax allowance and the inheritance tax-free amount, they're frozen. They're not going up with inflation. And this creates something called fiscal drag. It's kind of like a stealth tax, really. As your income or the value of your assets creeps up, you get pulled into higher tax bands without the actual tax rates even changing. It's a subtle but very effective way to increase the tax take. Right, on to Section 2, and this is where we get into the real nitty-gritty for expats and international residents. We're talking about the key tax changes. We're going to break down exactly how the income from your UK property, your savings, and your dividends is going to be taxed from now on. Okay, have a look at this table. This is where the rubber really hits the road. The government is raising taxes on income from assets. So for your UK property and savings income, from April 2027, the basic rate is jumping up 2 points to 22%, the higher rate to 42%, and the additional rate to 47%. But, and this is important, for dividend income, the change kicks in a whole year earlier, in April 2026. The rates go up to 10.75% and 35.75%. That staggered timing is absolutely a key detail for your financial planning. They're also tightening the screws for non-residents. First off, a tax credit on dividends that non-residents used to get? Gone. Second, expect the rules around capital gains tax for non-residents to get a lot stricter. And finally, if you're just temporarily living outside the UK, certain profits are now more likely to get taxed by HMRC. The bottom line here is that it's getting trickier to fully escape the UK tax net, even when you don't live there. Okay, let's move on to our third section, pensions and inheritance planning. This is all about the long game, your future wealth. And believe me, there are some really significant updates here for anyone who's building a UK state pension or has assets that could be hit by inheritance tax down the line. Now, this is a huge one for a lot of expats. The government is effectively ending what some saw as cheap access to the UK state pension if you live abroad. So 3 big changes. First, you'll now need a minimum of 10 years of UK national insurance contributions already on your record before you can even think about topping up from overseas. Second, that cheaper Class 2 option for voluntary contributions, it's being scrapped, which leads to the third point. Any future top-ups you make will almost certainly be at the much more expensive Class 3 rate. This really changes the maths on whether it's worth continuing to contribute. But it's not all bad news. On the inheritance tax front, there's actually a positive change, and it's a great example of a subtle but really powerful update. It affects agricultural and business property relief. Before this budget, if you didn't use up your full £1 million relief, the rest was just lost. Poof, gone. But now it's going to work just like the standard nil rate band. Any unused portion can be transferred over to your surviving spouse or partner. That's a game changer for couples with farms or family businesses. Okay, so theory is one thing, but how does all of this actually play out in the real world? Well, in this next section, we're going to make it real. We'll walk through 3 very different scenarios to see exactly how these changes might affect people just like you. First up, let's talk about a super common situation, a British expat who's living and working out in the UAE. How are these new rules going to hit them? So, for our UAE expats, that rental income they get from their property back in the UK, from 2027, it's going to be taxed at the new, higher 22% basic rate, which is going to take a bite out of their profits.
They also need to get online like yesterday and check their national insurance record to see if they've even got the 10 years needed to keep building their state pension. And of course, the dividend tax hike is going to trim the returns on their UK investments. So what's the immediate action? They have to review the cash flow from their UK assets and get a definite answer on their pension eligibility fast.
All right, let's switch gears for scenario 2. Let's imagine a non-UK citizen, maybe they're American, Australian, whatever, who worked in the UK for a few years and now has a UK pension just sitting there. What do they need to be thinking about right now? For this person, the big red flag waving is UK inheritance tax, or IHT. Any assets they have that are physically located in the UK, including that pension, could be on the hook for a 40% tax bill when they pass away. It is absolutely crucial they understand this risk. They also need to check the specific tax treaty between their home country and the UK. So, what's the takeaway? You guessed it. Get professional advice on your IHT exposure, and get it now. And for our final scenario, let's look at a family who are currently living abroad but are planning on moving back to the UK sometime in the next year or two. For them, smart planning isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely critical. For this family, timing is literally everything. The date they step back on UK soil is a massive financial event. They need to be asking themselves some serious questions. Should we sell off certain assets before we become UK residents again? How should we structure our finances before we land? They also need to get their heads around how their entire worldwide income will be taxed once they're back in the UK system. The essential action step here is to create a super detailed financial timeline and a pre-arrival checklist, long before they even start packing. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground, I know. So you're probably thinking, what now? What do I actually do? Well, this final section is all about action. This is your 30-day plan. 10 concrete steps you can take right now to get on top of these changes. All right, ready? Here's your master checklist. Number 1, go find your documents, pension statements, property deeds, the lot. 2, get online and check your UK national insurance record. It's easy to do. 3, review your will. Make sure it's up to date. 4, do some quick maths. Figure out how these new tax rates will actually affect your income. 5, check for any new property surcharges. 6, get a handle on your potential inheritance tax bill. 7, call your financial advisor. 8, if you have any trusts, review them. 9, if you're moving back, start that pre-arrival checklist. And last but definitely not least, number 10, don't panic. Seriously, the key is to stay calm and make informed decisions. And let's just zero in for a moment. If you own UK property, your homework is to recalculate your net rental yield with these new tax rates. If you have a UK pension, your most urgent task is to check if you meet that 10-year minimum. And then you've got to decide soon if you want to make voluntary contributions before that cheaper rate disappears forever. You know, whenever a budget comes out, it's so easy to have a knee-jerk reaction. But that's rarely the right move. I love this quote because it really gets to the heart of it. It's not about being reactive. It's about having a solid, thought-out plan and then making calm, strategic adjustments when the rules of the game change. Now, of course, I have to say this, and it's incredibly important. Everything we've talked about here is for general guidance only. This is not personal financial or tax advice. Everybody's situation is completely unique, so you really should get a personalized review from a qualified professional who can look at your specific circumstances. And if you're ready to create that personal action plan and you want to talk to an expert who lives and breathes these exact cross-border issues, you can book a complimentary review and strategy session with Adrian Rolls, who is a specialist advisor based in Dubai. The link is right there on your screen. You can use it to book your free session directly. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really hope this has given you the clarity you need to confidently navigate the changes from the 2025 UK budget.